Easy now GCKC, I'm TheFullLog and this is the 4K Showpony. We'll be taking a look at some of the most demanding and most beautiful games on PC, as well as some weird and wonderful stuff and everything in between. We'll be looking at how well they run in 4K, targeting 60 FPS at very high to ultra settings. And before the PC master race chin scratching dick wagglers pipe up with, oh you should play at 120 frames a second, we're not going to do that, and there's a couple of reasons why. 1. 60 frames a second provides a smooth and enjoyable experience. Unless you're playing at a professional esports level, then you can convince yourself that 120 FPS makes you a better gamer, but it probably doesn't. 2. I'm pretty sure there aren't currently any 4K 120Hz monitors available at the moment, and certainly not with Nvidia's G-Sync or AMD's FreeSync, which are quite frankly essential technologies in this day and age. As I understand it, these monitors will start to become available towards the end of 2018. 3. Even with a pair of 1080 Ti's, most modern games struggle to hit 60 frames a second at 4K without significantly turning down settings. There's no point in gaming at 4K if you can't enjoy all the lighting, the shadows and the effects in all their glory. You might as well play on console. Now that's addressed to dick wagglers, if you're just here to check out some games in 4K and how they perform, you're in the right place. Let's motor. Right, we're going to start this episode with Ubisoft's Ghost Recon Wildlands. Developed by Ubisoft Paris in their Anvil Next 2.0 engine, it's a very demanding game. I managed to grab myself a copy of Wildlands on PC as it came as a freebie with my graphics card. However, despite the GCKC lads all having been excited for Wildlands due to the trailers, the beta on PS4 was a bit meh and it didn't really live up to expectations, so we left it until we checked it out again during a free-to-play weekend. This time we decided it was worth a purchase, despite still being a little bit sluggish on the PS4. I'd heard good things about the PC version, so I fired up my copy and put it through its paces. You're going to need some serious beef to get it to run on the upper tier of settings, and at 4K you're not going to see much past an average of 35 frames per second on a single high-end graphics card. This is where SLI comes in. For my console friends, SLI is an Nvidia technology that allows you to harness the power of 2 or more graphics cards. Twice the processing power does not result in double the performance however, and along with many games not supporting SLI and often having to prat about with your system settings to get it to work for those that do, you can generally expect to see gains of around 50%. This is dependent on the game though, sometimes it's less than this, sometimes it's more. Thankfully, SLI in Wildlands works like a charm, and I was generally seeing upwards of 55 frames a second using the following settings. If you're on a single graphics card, you want to drop out the turf settings straight away, they will tank your frame rate, as does having the shadows on ultra, just drop that down a notch. One of the things I love about the settings page on Wildlands is that it gives you a preview of the impact on image quality of the changes that you're making. You can then go and run a benchmark and get a rough idea of the kind of frame rate you're going to get with those settings. Even with only a single high-end graphics card, you're going to get a much smoother experience at 4K on PC than you would do at 1080p on PS4. It's almost worlds apart. The game feels so much more responsive, and if you've got SLI and you jack the settings up, it's a really, really beautiful looking game. It's worth noting that this game has received a number of update patches over the past year or so. I did some performance testing when it first came out and I've seen a massive improvement in performance since then. If you checked this game out back when it came out and you thought it ran like shit, check it out again now. The difference is unbelievable. It's hard to quantify what kind of game Ghost Recon Wildlands is. Set in Bolivia, you are tasked with taking down a nationwide drug cartel. There's RPG elements, however, levelling up grants you access to perks and better gear rather than directly boosting your strength or your HP or whatever. In addition, you often need resources to activate these perks, which are collected from around the map. The enemies aren't bullet sponges either like we saw in The Division, and time to kill is quick. Gunplay is responsive, at least on the PC, and it's thoroughly enjoyable. You have a massive open world to explore, and undertaking your various missions, travel is done via car, truck, motorbike and helicopter, which can easily be jacked a la Grand Theft Auto. And boats. Missions can be approached creatively and fit your playstyle, be it using tech, stealth or all guns blazing, and any combination of these. One of the best things about this game for me is that the whole thing can be played in co-op, and this is where the game really excels. Story takes a back seat here as the game makes the common mistake of feeding you much of the story via radio communications while you and your firm are mouthing off to each other on the headsets and you just don't hear it. But to be honest, it doesn't matter. The fun here comes from the planning and executing of each mission. The action is where it's at here, and after initially being unsure, I've enjoyed my time so far in the depths of fictional Bolivia, and I'll definitely be coming back. If you haven't heard of Star Citizen, where the fuck have you been for the past 5 to 6 years? Love them or hate them, Roberts Space Industries' Star Citizen could quite possibly be the most ambitious game ever developed. As a massive fan of Wing Commander as a kid, I was happy to drop some Wonga on a basic package during the original funding campaign, and I've watched its progress ever since. With the release of Alpha 3.0 last year, the project is starting to show some real tangible progress, and while I haven't played too much so I don't spoil the final finished product, I couldn't resist dipping my toe in. Performance, however, wasn't great, which is to be expected at this stage. It didn't matter what resolution I ran in, between 1080p to 4K, the persistent universe started at about 24 to 30 frames a second and would slowly degrade to 14 or less. With the very recent release of 3.1, this improved, and although I still get no performance gain from reducing the resolution, my experience so far has been at a more steady 30 frames a second, which is playable. SLI does work here, and I was getting up to 45 frames a second with this on. I had experienced some flickering and some micro stutter in 3.0, but this hasn't seemed to noticeably rear its head in 3.1. I do need to play for longer though to confirm this. The concept of Star Citizen was to be a modern day space sim, featuring combat, bounty hunting, piracy and trading. But as the funds rolled in, it was expanded to include a multitude of other options such as first person shooter aspects, multi-crew ships, mining, exploration, racing, territory control and more. 5+ years into development and a switch from CryEngine to Amazon's Lumberyard engine, including an ongoing lawsuit from Crytek, and we now have a small and basic version of the persistent universe. This is complete with quests, shops, space stations and 3 massive, fully explorable moons. I also checked in on the Star Marine Team Deathmatch FPS module that ran really well in the previous version 2.6. However, this seems to be suffering since the update, with general frame rates between 40 to 48 on a single card. In SLI it was all over the place, between 30 to 60 FPS. I didn't test at any lower resolutions, and you can see the settings here just for the record. To say Star Citizen has a pretty steep learning curve is an understatement. Flying a spaceship is no easy task. I've been in and out of the control menus countless times and often thinking things like, well, if boost is different to afterburner, then what the fuck does boost do? It's worth it though. Once you get to grips with all the controls, there's a lot of fun to be had. That's in between all the bugs and crashes though. This game clearly has a long way to go, but I'm more than willing to wait. I'm confident Roberts Space Industries or Cloud Imperium Games, whatever they want to call themselves, will deliver on their goal. I'd say maybe wait to check this out yourself, have some patience, and the final product will be something mega. From Mankind's future, we go back to Mankind's past. Kingdom Come Deliverance is Czech developers Warhorse Studios' debut game. It was funded by a Kickstarter campaign some 5 years ago, which I somehow missed out on. They've tried to keep the game as historically accurate as possible. It's an RPG set in 15th century Bohemia, which is now part of Central Europe. If you think Skyrim without the magic and beasties, then you're nearly there. Performance has been an issue since launch, although this has improved somewhat since the recent 1.4 patch. SLI does sort of work, however I found this to be less so after the recent patch. It is worth noting that I installed the high-res texture pack at the same time though. While I found SLI to deliver upwards of 50 frames a second, it introduces a weird lighting bug indoors as demonstrated here. In some places it's much worse than this. This is how it should look. Single card performance has been loads better since the last patch as well. While charging through the dense forest on horseback, I'm getting between 37 to 42 frames a second. Lightly built up areas it's more like 53 to 55, and it does seem to bounce around a bit, though this is highly dependent on your settings. You can see what I've used here. Warhorse has stated that ultra settings are for future rigs, so I've dropped mine down a bit, and to be honest I haven't noticed a massive difference in terms of image quality. Using the CryEngine, it's a gorgeous game and a rig beater for sure.
Are you serious?
The combat system has been quite divisive in the community, and even my own feelings are split on it. You make choices in terms of direction of attack and whether you want to slash or stab. Directional blocking and costing is also thrown in there, and it sounds really good on paper. However, while this results in slow, tense and considered swordplay, it completely falls apart when fighting multiple opponents, which is often. It's harshly punishing early game and gets a lot easier once you've got a decent set of plate armour. This feels like the challenge is the wrong way round, so it should be getting more difficult towards the end of the game, not easier. As with most RPGs, next to story, character development and advancement is paramount, and there's a wealth of options available to you in Kingdom Come. Levelling up is done by partaking in whatever activity you want to get better at. Attacking will raise your strength stat and unlock perks in the offensive skill tree, such as whatever weapon you're using, and that can be swords and axes or maces. I'm hoping there's a two-handed bonker in there somewhere, but I haven't seen one just yet. Charisma and appearance come into play as well, opening up different conversation options and your ability to barter.
God almighty, has something happened to you? Did someone steal your fancy clothes?
Can we do something about the price?
Sure, why not?
The story so far has been solid. I've done about 20 hours worth and the quests seem to be able to be completed in a variety of different ways. The dialogue is very well written and fucking hilarious at times. The voice acting is generally good, although some lines are repeated and reused and some conversations sound a little unnatural, as if the individual actors have recorded them individually in isolation. This game isn't for everyone. I've been finding the pace quite slow, which is fine by me, but I appreciate that's not everyone's cup of tea. However, if you are into that sort of thing, then definitely grab it. Planet Coaster is Frontier Development's theme park building game, and it's a lot of fun. It's more of a chilled Sunday game, and it's got a massive focus on creativity. It uses Frontier Development's proprietary engine Cobra, which is currently on its 4th revision, initially being developed as far back as 1988. Headed up by David Braben, who's best known for the Elite series, Frontier Developments have really come into their own over the last few years. Performance-wise, overall I was getting about 40 to 52 frames a second. Zoomed in it was more like 42 to 45, but to be honest you don't really notice, especially with G-Sync active. I've got the settings on pretty much max, you can see these here. This game doesn't require any lightning reflexes and the experience has been buttery smooth for me. In terms of gameplay, I would have liked more park management features. There's enough to keep you going, but as previously mentioned, the emphasis here is creativity. You've got an unbelievable amount of options and freedom for building and decorating your rides, and the coaster physics are decent. I don't know how realistic they've gone, but you need to consider a number of things while building your ride so your visitors don't chuck up too much. And you can see the sick all over the path when they do. The shops and facilities are totally customisable as well, enabling you to match them to the theme of your park or the area you put them in. There are two main game modes: scenarios, which start you off with a few buildings and maybe some rides, where you have to complete certain objectives such as attract X amount of visitors or build a coaster that is X high to move on to the next scenario and unlock further ones. There's also a sandbox mode, which has unlimited cash and you can fuck about and build what you want to your heart's content. Anything you build can be used in your other parks or shared with the community on Steam. There's a pretty decent creators community on there already, sharing their work if you're not one to spend too much time building. They've even added a challenge mode where you start with an empty park and the financial limitations that go with it. They also throw the odd challenge at you. I think this mode was sorely missed at launch and it's a great addition. Finally, anything you can build, you can ride on in first person, so you get to have a glimpse at what your ride would be like. It would be interesting if Frontier could design something you could export into VR for viewing. You can pay me for that tip later, Mr. Braben. If you like the theme park games of the 90s or the Roller Coaster Tycoon series, then you'd be a moron not to get this. For the final game of this episode, I've saved the best till last. id Software's 2016 Doom is a masterpiece, and SLI or not, manages to maintain an almost unbroken 60 frames a second at 4K on ultra settings. I originally binned this game off after playing the multiplayer beta on PS4. What a mistake to maker. After picking up on Steam last year, I was instantly bowled over by the campaign, which, I'm sure you already know, drives you to keep moving by incentivising you with health and ammo pickups for kills, especially the close-up melee glory kills. This is such a breath of fresh air to the FPS genre, which for the past 10 years or so has largely seen you hiding behind cover to magically charge your health up. This mechanic seems just even more ridiculous in modern or historical era shooters. The pace here is non-stop, and I've often found myself gasping for breath after a particularly hectic section, quite literally bouncing around in my chair, and quite stupidly physically trying to dodge fireballs, like that might help. I have to talk about the music as well. It's fucking fantastic. The way it arranges itself according to the action and seems to be intrinsically linked to the mayhem is a massive achievement, as is the blend of distorted synth bass and the heavy metal guitars. You don't have to be a fan of either to appreciate not only how fitting it is to the theme, but also how integral the music is to the entire Doom experience.
Presence eliminated. Lockdown disengaged.
If I had to say one bad thing about the game, it's that searching for the hidden items can be a bit boring. That's about it. There's some challenges in there which are quite good. They have you killing demons within a set time period using specific skills you've learned throughout the game, and you're rewarded with extra power-ups for doing this. They were loads of fun. That being said, I do need to revisit multiplayer and take a look at Snap Map, which lets you put your own levels and multiplayer maps together and share them with your friends and the wider internet community. If by any chance you haven't played this yet, then you're a fucking idiot like I was. Don't be scared, get right in it on ultra-violent settings and get ready to be a gun-slinging, chainsaw-wielding, demon-slaying Space Marine badman. I'll leave you with a bit of footage of some gameplay. Appreciate the music, the graphics are stunning, the particle effects are spot on and the frame rate is silky smooth. Until next time, take it easy.
Demonic presence eliminated. Lockdown disengaged.
Judging by our last encounter, I'd say you made a big mistake, Kanye.
Where's my fucking sword?